President Trump is planning a visit to Kenosha, Wisconsin tomorrow to survey damage from the recent protests that have been happening there. But state leaders, they're asking the president to cancel his upcoming trip. This story has hundreds of views sounding off right now on our KARE 11 Facebook page, and I'll explain in this morning's Digital Dive. So in a letter to the president, Wisconsin Governor Tony Evers wrote, "I, along with other community leaders who have reached out, are concerned about what your presence will mean for Kenosha and our state." The governor continued, "I am concerned your presence will only delay our work to overcome division and move forward together." Kenosha's Democratic Mayor John Antiramian says he too would like the president to cancel his upcoming trip at this point in time. President Trump is scheduled to travel to Kenosha to meet with law enforcement officials there after Jacob Blake was shot by police. Video of the shooting was shared on social media, sparking nationwide protests against police violence. President Trump is criticizing Democratic leaders in various cities that have had weeks of protests, including his rival Joe Biden, with his tweet saying, quote, "When is slow Joe Biden going to criticize the anarchists, thugs, and agitators in Antifa? When is he going to suggest bringing up the National Guard in badly run and crime-infested Democrat cities and states?" And the former VP tweeting this yesterday, "The temperature in this country is higher, tensions run stronger, divisions run deeper, and all of us are less safe because he can't do the job of the American president." Biden there referencing Trump. Now, White House officials said that the president still plans to go to Wisconsin despite getting that letter from the governor. And Chris's visit also comes as a recent CNBC poll found that Biden narrowly is currently leading Trump there, which is a key swing state that Trump actually won back in 2016.
Yeah, if you look at even the national polls, things are definitely tightening up. It looks like it's going to be a very tight race. Thanks, Alicia. Let's